Hello and welcome back to World Traveler Cooking. Today we're going to do another Swedish dish. This one is usually had after Thursday lunch and can be drank at other times as well. It is called punch. I'm going to introduce this dish in Swedish now. For anybody who is watching who understands Swedish, please pardon my poor pronunciation and perhaps butchering of the grammar. Hej, välkommen till World Traveler Cooking. Idag har vi en svensk dryck. Efter torsdagens lunch vi dricker punch. So, the ingredients here, number of different alcoholic beverages plus some other ingredients. The overall drink will have, I think, typically 20 to 30% alcohol content. But our first ingredient is typically in Sweden, you'd usually use Batavia Arrack. Unfortunately, here in Jakarta, even though this is where we make it, typically Batavia Arrack is only made for export, but we can get a different Arrack from Bali. This is such as this one, which we would use here interchangeably. They're made in basically the same way. They both have a very smoky, almost harsh flavor with wooden overtones. This is sort of like, imagine a teak-aged rum. Or vodka, it's a mixture usually of sugar cane and rice that has then been fermented, distilled, and then typically put in teak or other tropical woods to age a bit. So it tends to have very smoky flavors. Typically you'll get like sort of the smoke that you would get like on from smoking things over burning coconut husks, for example. To this we will add vodka. We want to use vodka that's about 40% alcohol by volume, so that's why I chose this one. We will use white wine. Sometimes people add lemon juice instead of white wine. I'm going to add some lemon juice in addition to the white wine. We have yet more vodka because this uses a lot of vodka. Then we have some water and sugar. I have about 900 milliliters of water, and to this we will add 900 grams of sugar. We will make a syrup. Once I'm done making the syrup, I will cool it down, and then we will mix the drink, put it back in bottles, and basically set it aside for several weeks. I will do the taste test today, but that's but we have to allow for the fact that the flavors will meld more over time. And then one last thing is that I will use some very strong brewed tea to color it a bit. Punch usually has a sort of yellowish color to it. I would describe it kind of similar to this white wine here. And you don't have to use an expensive white wine. I'm using here Plaga Sauvignon Blanc, which is made here in Indonesia. So we will see how good this wine is also. You can use some of the cheaper wine you can get. I would not use like the super cheap Indonesian wines because we're talking about the ones that are under 100,000 rupiah a bottle, simply because those ones tend to be super, super sweet. And I don't want that. But you could try it and add less sugar syrup, I suppose. So this may still be on the slightly sweet side, but it probably shouldn't be too bad. You can use a fairly cheap wine, just use some common sense there. So next up, we'll make our simple syrup. Whatever we don't use in the simple syrup, we can save for other things like mixed drinks, to sweeten fruit juice and the like. So don't be afraid to make too much. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll start by making our simple syrup. So we take roughly equal volumes of sugar and water, and we will heat it together, slowly stirring until the sugar dissolves. Then we will start cooling this down. It doesn't take that much heat. If you're using water you don't trust, obviously you want to boil it. But if you're using water you do trust, like I use water from the water dispenser here, then you just heat it until it dissolves. And now you can see that this has become quite clear. It's still maybe like, it's still uncomfortably warm, so I'm going to go ahead and do I kind of cool this down a bit. But it isn't as hot as you'd think. So this is now off the heat. I'm going to start mixing my other ingredients and then I'll add the syrup in order to avoid some of the heat addition also. Or you can just basically set this aside and let it cool for like an hour. Sorry for the background noise. I think there's some also construction being done next door. So again, sorry for the background noise. I'm going to start by adding about half of a bottle of Arrack. So about 350 milliliters. Looks about right. And I'm going to mix this with about half of my bottle of wine. A little over half the bottle of wine, so a bit more wine than Arrack. I think a little more wine than this. It's actually already smelling really fragrant. You can smell the Arrack. And to this, I'm going to start with the 700 ml bottle of vodka. And I am likely to add to that the other smaller bottle too, but we will see. Now this is going to look like I'm creating a whole lot of alcohol, but keep in mind that this is ideally going to want to sit for several weeks. I will be tasting it today, but it will be at its peak in like 4 or 5 weeks at least. So this is definitely something you want to sit around in your cabinet for a while. Again, sorry for the background noise. Sorry for the background noise. But I'm now going to start spooning in some of this syrup. And you'll see right away it takes a little bit to mix in. I'm going to stir it in nicely. And taste it. Wow, you can really taste the Arrack. It's actually very pleasant. They say Arrack is the heart of a good punch. And it's also interesting because punch comes from the Sanskrit word for 5 because of 5 ingredients. Fruit, in this case the wine and the lemon, syrup, vodka, tea, and Arrack. And you can basically make this so that it has the flavor profile you want. If you want it sweeter, you can add more syrup. I like it a bit less sweet, so I will probably add less syrup. If you like more Arrack, you can add more Arrack. That's pretty nicely balanced, actually. So, I think, wow, that's actually good. I'm going to add just a little more to be on the safe side, because I'm using a lot less syrup than the recipes I've seen called for. But this is tasting really good to me. I'm going to add the juice of 1 lemon, and I'll be right back. Okay, so after tasting this and adding a bit more syrup, I think it needs just a hair more of Arrack and wine, so I'm going to adjust a bit. That's one important thing about always having more of these ingredients than you expect to use. I'm going to taste it now. This is really, really nice. I think it still needs just a hair more on the Arrack side. But don't overdo the Arrack. Of course, depending upon the Arrack that you have, you may need more than sometimes other times. So here you go. And this is good. I think this is where I'm going to keep it. I think I'm going to try adding a bit more vodka. Just because the recipes I've seen, it suggests more vodka than I was using. That's definitely good. Now we will pour in our strong tea in order to add a little color. And look at that color. Still good. I think I'm ready now for the taste test. Just going to put a little bit of this in a glass and we will be back. And now for the taste test. The smell of this reminds me very much of fruit-infused Arrack. I've done Arrack infused with both pineapple and salak. They kind of remind me of this. It takes the harsh notes off the Arrack, and the smokiness just becomes a support for a rich flavor. So let's go ahead and try it. So, as I like it, this is not as sweet as the punch that I've gotten at Systembolaget when I used to live in Sweden. I think that's a bit too sweet, so I've made this a bit less sweet. But the flavors are very balanced, and I'm sure they will just get better with time. Fruity, but not overly fruity. You have the rich heart of the Arrack. Sweet, but not too sweet. It's very nice. Now, if you find this content interesting, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have something to say, feel free to say it in the comments, especially if you make a dish like this and you do it differently. I'd love to hear your tips. If you look at some of my other videos, you will see a lot of discussion in those videos about, things that people do differently, things that people think they do better than I do. I actually really appreciate those because it allows somebody looking at this video to see a wider context of the differences in how people make them. So feel free to talk about that in the comments. At any rate, recipes in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week. Mm.